I'm going to propose that the thing that actually makes the difference is not the trauma work, not the soothing of the wounded child, not the alignment with them about what they went through and what they got. The thing that's really going to make the difference is when you can take those experiences and you can connect them to how it shows up in their dance today. I am Bonnie Slim. I'm one of the faculty members. For those of you who do not know me, I'm from Connecticut. I'm 62, coming up on a birthday. I am married to a heterosexual man. We've been married for many, many years, and we have 4 grown children who have all launched, but we're still close, so that's nice. Gregory Bateson is one of the many people that Terry's model is built on, and I think it's always helpful to remind ourselves that each of us stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. And in terms of family systems, Gregory Bateson was one of the earliest family systems thinkers, dating back to the 40s and 50s. He was talking about circular causality. Gregory Bateson is actually from England, and he then spent a lot of time in the South Pacific. He identified as an ecologist, a biologist, an anthropologist, a cybernist. I don't know what we call that, a cybernetic person. Psychology. He had multi areas of interest, and while he was in the South Pacific, he met and married his wife, Margaret Mead, who was a wonderful cultural anthropologist studying systems across cultures. And I add all of this in because I think when you think about RLT, it's very much based on family systems, and more, Terry's beginning to talk about the importance of taking this beyond the couple and thinking about the whole ecosystem, not just within the couple or the family or the community, but globally in the world. So I just think it's nice to remember that much of his thoughts were broader based. So in keeping with the fact that he was an ecologist, I'm going to share a metaphor. And I shared this with one of my mentoring groups yesterday. So I want you to imagine a creek running slightly downslope, and a bunch of kids decide that they want to try to redirect the water. Many of you may have done this when you were a kid. You get in the creek and you start messing around with the rocks and the stones and the wood, and you try to sort of make the water go in a different direction. It's what beavers do all the time. Beavers are architectural engineers, really, when it comes to ecosystems. They can change the flow of water just by downing a single tree and having it land across the creek in a particular way. So sometimes the interventions, this is where the metaphor comes in, sometimes the interventions that we might use might be little sticks or little pebbles or little rocks or things that we hope that they'll make a difference and they don't really make a difference. Or you might see couples trying a number of things that they work on themselves to see if they can change the pattern. And again, rocks and sticks and things that they put into the creek to try to change the direction of the dance. But nothing really is kind of moving it. The water just kind of overflows and it just keeps going. Well, a difference that makes the difference is when you can take a particular log or stick, it doesn't have to be huge, but it's perfectly placed in the perfect place in the creek that actually redirects the water a whole different direction and may even create a new pool of water before it flows further down the hill. So with that one particular thing just perfectly placed, it actually changes the whole ecosystem of that creek. And that's what we're tasked with doing as RLT practitioners, is really paying attention actively to what's the difference that's going to make the difference here. What's the thing that I'm going to do to help this couple change the dance that they're in? Another term that I'll use interchangeably is the point of inflection. What's the point of inflection that we're going to come into the system to try to change something? It's a little less wordy, it's a little easier to get your head around if we just talk about the point of inflection. And what I want you to begin doing, if you haven't already, is to think about the point of inflection as something that we do in a macro way. This is our work. They come in, they pay you money, and they want you to help them make a change. right? They're hiring you for that. So it's not power over, like I'm going to change the system without your buy-in. It's they're hiring you to help them make a change. So the macro is they have a particular dance and they want to get out of that dance, and you've been hired to help them figure out how to get out of that dance. In the micro way, I want you to think about it like the step-by-step moves that we can make all along the way that may make a difference, and that some differences may make bigger differences than other things. Some things that we do might resonate more, might land, they might stick a bit more, and those are the ones that you want to pay attention to. So when Bateson, it was originally written up in the book Steps to an Ecology of Mind, which Terry has mentioned before. When you think about the difference that makes the difference, I think he was thinking more generally, not just about how couples do this, but that all information isn't the same. It's not equally weighted. So for instance, if you drive by a forest and you see a tree that is fallen, you say, oh, the tree fell in the forest. But if you look out your window and a tree fell on your car, that's a different piece of information. So when we're looking at the couples dance, and I'm going to break this down by phases, I want you to remember that all information isn't of equal weight, okay? So I'm going to go through these phases and talk about what I think might be the difference that makes the difference in a very sort of broad way, because you're all practitioners and you can think about how do you do that specifically. And I'm not, it doesn't matter if you agree with me or disagree with me. I don't want you to necessarily buy in. What I'd like you to do is to be thinking about it and actively thinking about it, because sometimes we can fall into just, going into our office or turning on our screen and meeting with a couple without really waking up to what's the thing that I can do here that's going to actually give them more of what they've hired me for. So phase one, let me just break it down into part one and part two. Data gathering is the first part of phase one. And when I think of what's the most important thing at that point, it's recognizing that you're collecting information. Obviously, you are coming in a relational way and you're making a space for them to give you whatever it is that would be helpful for you to formulate, what is the dance here and how do I want to reflect that back to them in the second part of phase one. But the most important thing, I think, is to remember that all things aren't worth the same amount of time or the same amount of focus. A lot of times therapists and coaches like to interpret what they think is the most important thing. We have our own hypothesis about what this couple needs to work on. But what we're asking you to do is really take that miracle question, pay attention to their answer, and let that be your guide. You don't have to be interested in being a part of this marriage. What you're hired to do is to help them figure out how they can work on their relationship. So for instance, if they say, sex life is great, parenting is really hard, we have some difficulty with the in-laws, in that particular moment, your conceptualization is going to be less about their sexual relationship and more about the thing that they're presenting as the issue. It doesn't mean that you're not going to gather some information about their intimacy, but you really also want to pay attention really closely to what's the dynamic that's happening when they are parenting, or what's the dynamic that's happening when they are with their in-laws. So you're just gathering that information and you're recognizing that you may be tuning in more to some, and you may be deciding what is irrelevant. It's just extra stuff that they're sticking in there. What's historical? Sometimes if you ask people for an example, they'll give you an example that's 20 years old, but they'll say it as if it happened yesterday. And then their partner will say, well, I haven't been doing that for 20 years. And they're like, well, I know, but you just asked for what's an example. So you want to make sure that the examples that you get are actually relevant to today's dance. You might tag in your head, oh, there's some residual stuff they need to work through from 20 years ago, but that's not the dance that they're coming in with right now. So you're really taking that information in and you're weighing it. The second part is joining through the truth. And in essence, this is really not just naming what's the difference that makes the difference, but you're sharing with them, in essence, what you are proposing needs to happen in order for this dance to change. And the part that makes that's really important here is that you're doing it with that perfect amount of stress and safety. If you come down too heavy, that's not going to make the difference because they're going to shut down. They're not going to hear you, or they're going to fire you. If you come in too soft, it's cozy, it's nice, but it's not RLT, and it doesn't forward any movement, and it might not necessarily get some buy-in. So that joining through the truth is essential, and I believe it's one of the hardest things to do in RLT. That anybody that finds it simple, I'll just be curious what makes it simple for you, because that balance and having that resonate with the couple, where you are resonating with the emotional urgency that they're bringing in about what they're talking about, that you're on their side, and you're saying the hard thing about where they're getting it wrong, and you're doing it in a way that feels like, it's got that appropriate discrepancy to it. That to me is like a real important hurdle to get through, that you can't do unless you do really solid data gathering. Phase two, let's move on to phase two. Let's say they've bought in, you've got therapeutic contract. What is the difference that makes the difference in phase two with RLT? I'm going to propose that the thing that actually makes the difference is not the trauma work, not the soothing of the wounded child, not the alignment with them about what they went through and what they got. The thing that's really going to make the difference is when you can take those experiences and you can connect them to how it shows up in their dance today. So phase two work without that connection for how the adaptive child shows up in their relationship today is actually not RLT. It might be another kind of trauma therapy. It might be another kind of exploration, but it doesn't quite get the job done. And that means that we need to not only soothe and nurture that adaptive child, but we're also really paying attention to limit setting and guiding them better, and really kind of amplifying the misery around continuing to do it. So phase two work with RLT always has that as a part of the essential piece that needs to happen for people to really be ready for phase three. Phase three work. Phase three work is skills. And when I think about what's the difference that makes the difference in skills work, well, there are a couple things. One is, if we're thinking of intimacy as being these three components of vulnerability, empathy, and accountability, that these are the three areas that we're trying to help the couple cultivate. One of the differences that makes the difference is to really pinpoint what is the thing that they're missing. Because a lot of individuals aren't missing all three things. They might be missing just one thing. So let's say you have somebody who's a really nice person, they're a loving partner, they'll engage talking about what's going on in their partner, and they'll really be attuned to them. They show up on time, they pick up the kids on time, they go grocery shopping, they share the chores, but they don't reveal anything about their inner world or their experiences. So that particular person could use some micro coaching around the skill of vulnerability. And you can take any of these permutations and say, oh, okay, wait a second. What about the person who's really kind, really nice, really loving, shares their feelings, shares what's going on for them, but falls down on the job in terms of things that they promised. They break promises all the time. The thing that they're missing there is accountability. So you're constantly thinking about what's the thing that actually needs to be taught here. And it might be different for both partners, right? So the difference that makes the difference is fine-tuning your coaching. It's not just doing a feedback wheel because you like to teach the feedback wheel. It's, why am I teaching this particular skill for this couple, and how is that going to make a difference for them right at this moment in time? I've had feedback wheels that they collapse, and I just back out of the feedback wheel and I say, well, maybe another day we'll try that. So don't be afraid if you get it wrong or you thought that they were more in their wise adult, that you can always back out and be with where they're at right now. Microcoaching is a really important way to make the difference because, again, we can teach a skill and we can think we did a really good job of teaching the skill. And then they come back the next time and they say, everything went haywire. It didn't work at all. I don't even remember it. We teach it like, oh, this is going to be this wonderful skill. Well, this wonderful skill relies on an incredible amount of wise adult and remembering all the steps and staying attuned. It's like a lot to actually learn and then integrate. So the person, the practitioner who teaches it without microcoaching doesn't give them the little nuancy things that make all the difference in the world of that particular skill landing in a way that actually works. And here's the what I liken it to, because I hear about this stuff all the time. Many people will go into the doctor and the doctor will say, you're overweight, you need to lose weight. Doctors, by the way, are not trained for nutrition in any great extent. So the patient goes home and they say, the doctor told me to lose weight. The doctor writes in the note, counsel the patient to lose weight. What happens a year later? Nothing happens a year later. The doctor may feel good about counseling the patient to lose weight, but there's nothing holding that person to any kind of way of doing that. And so it falls down on the job and it's a missed opportunity because of there's not micro-coaching. There's nothing to hold that person through that. So when you're doing any skill, whether it's any of the big ones like timeout or core negative image work or feedback wheel, teaching people how to make requests, teaching people how to do the apology, holding their hand step by step so that they have a fighting chance of doing it really well is an important part of making a difference there. So let's say your couple's doing pretty well, right? You've done the skills work, you've gone through all these phases, you may be bouncing back a little bit, when they fall out of their wise adult and they need to go back to phase 2. But let's say that they're doing it pretty well. The goal of practice is not that they're going to be with you forever, right? Some clients might want to be with you forever, but the goal of practice is that they then go off and they continue to integrate and practice these skills by themselves over and over and over again. And here's what's important. If done well, if done really, really effectively, and if you have a couple that's really invested in this, they can start to be the agents of change around knowing what's the difference that makes the difference with my partner in this relationship in this moment in time. And that's when the magic really starts to happen. That's when we have that, what I feel like saying is this, but what I'm going to do instead is that. Relational jujitsu, my instinct is to do this, and I'm not going to do that. I'm going to lean in and I'm going to connect and I'm going to offer my partner something different in this moment, even if I think they're acting like a porcupine. That's relational jujitsu. I'm going to change my move, duck in, go in a different way. Relational integrity is the practice of this relational mindfulness over time. You're practicing, 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 and you're able to hold it even when your partner doesn't. That's when the difference that makes the difference. I could go into my adaptive child place right now, and I'm not going to today. Every other day I might have done that, but just for today, I'm going to stay in this place of relational integrity. So the couple begin to embody the skill of being able to do that without the practitioner's guidance. And that's when you have the integration of it into their own system and for the ability for them to end the work that they're doing with you with the idea that they're going to continue to practice that minute by minute by minute for the rest of their relationship. It's not like you get a certificate at the end or you're out on the off ramp. You have to keep doing it just like with any change. But they now have the skills and they've integrated them enough that with practice, it becomes more and more a part of, that practice or that skills practice state trait that ultimately they can get to a place where they might have the whoosh and then instinctively they move into a more connected kind of stance with their partner.